my crippledness. I want to talk to you guys about this. So months ago, I was working out and I did some squats, and pow, the next morning I had this terrible pain to the point where I had difficulty walking. I was literally limping around or gimping around, and it got so bad that I really couldn't get out of bed. If I did get out of bed, I was walking around with a stick, or I was and eventually I got crutches, and I had to walk with the crutches. I eventually got one of those ankle, what do they call them? Ankle bracelets, I think they call them. Ankle braces, and I really couldn't walk well without it. It was that painful. It was excruciatingly painful. And I talked to somebody who did personal training, and I told her that about what happened. And she said, well, what did you do? I said, I did squats. And she said, what are you, 80 years old? She says, you shouldn't be getting that kind of injury doing squats. So I eventually went to the foot doctor after weeks of excruciating pain, and went to the foot doctor, and I told him about what happened. And he said, that doesn't make any sense that you would get that kind of pain from squats. Like, this just doesn't happen. So he did an x-ray, and he said, there's no damage on your feet. There's no damage on your feet. I don't see anything here. And he showed me the x-rays, and he said, there's nothing here. There's nothing here. So I eventually got an MRE, and the MRE basically said there's kind of some damage on your Achilles tendon. That's pretty much all we can find. So the pain eventually went away after a week, about a week after that. The pain eventually, not completely, it did not completely go away, but it went away to the point where I could walk somewhat normally. And eventually the limp went away, the gimp went away, right? Me gimping around, that wasn't the case. Then all of a sudden I started getting pain on my left foot, and I got pain on my ankle, and my left ankle. And all of a sudden I was literally the same pains that I was experiencing on my right ankle and my right foot, my right heel, I was now experiencing on the left side. Same spots, same levels of pain, everything. It felt exactly the same. So I'm thinking, well, this doesn't make any sense. So my father was telling me, Ted, you have familial Mediterranean fever. And this was not the first time that my dad told me this. When I was about 11 years old, one morning in Concord, California, I could not get out of bed because I woke up with excruciating pain on my right leg, on the outside part of my right leg. It was so bad that I could not get out of bed. And I would take several days off from school. And then it went away. And then the next year, I got excruciating pain on my chest cavity. And then the pain on the chest cavity traveled to the leg. All of a sudden, excruciating pain on my right leg. Same thing. Stayed home, couldn't go to school for several days. Eventually went to the doctor. Doctor did a blood test, and I think x-rays, and said, there's nothing there. We don't know what's wrong with him. And my father told me, Ted, this is familial Mediterranean fever. And the reason why my dad said this is because my father had relatives who experienced the same type of thing, the same type of problem. So going into high school, there was no pain. Out of high school, there was no pain. 2016 happened. And yeah, 2016. And I was doing about an hour. I used to do these long sessions on my heavy bag. I would punch and kick for an hour, like that guy from Roadhouse. And I loved doing that. There's something wonderful about hitting the bag for an hour. just like put some music on, start slow, increase, slow down again, move around. There's just something very meditative about the whole experience. I'm not going to lie. And the next day, I had difficulty walking. I had this terrible pain on my right foot, and it wouldn't go away, and I could not walk. So I thought, well, maybe it's because I over-exercised. So it took about a month for that pain to go away. And then it went away. I stopped exercising for a while. Then eventually I got back to exercising, but I did lighter exercises. So 2017 comes around, and I decide that I want to make a Dutch recipe called croquettes. Now, for those of you who don't know, croquettes are basically deep fried little meat pies. This is a very famous thing to eat in the Netherlands. And basically what you do is you make a roux, and you add boiled beef, shredded beef to the roux. You mix it all up, and then you let it dry, you let it harden, and then you make little, you take this hardened roux that has meat in it, you make little oblong shapes with it, or you can just roll it into balls, and then you bread it and you deep fry it, and you get this little deep fried meat croquette. It's very delicious. It's super addictive. But I decided that I wanted to make some in the summer of 2017, and I wasn't exercising at that time. And I started eating these deep fried meat cakes, croquettes. And one day, that right foot started flaring up again. And I wasn't doing any exercise. I was like, what's going on? I'm not exercising. Why am I feeling this? And I was stuck in bed for another 2 weeks. So I'm like, what is going on? So after 2018, nothing happened. 2019, nothing happened. 2020, nothing happened. 2021, nothing happened. And then in the summer of this year, boom, happens again. But it happens after doing squats. So I thought, okay, it's an injury. It's a sports injury. It's all this is. And then my dad later on, when my dad told me, Ted, this could be FMF. And I said, no, I don't think it's FMF. I think it's just a sports injury. So after the right foot healed up and there was no more pain, all of a sudden the left foot and the left ankle started going through the same sensation, the same very painful sensation. And I'm like, wait a second. I felt it on the right. Now I'm feeling it on the left. And this went on for months. This pain went on for months. I was literally stuck in bed listening to Tori Amos for hours. I'm not exaggerating. Listening to Tori Amos for hours, Evanescence, Linkin Park. I mean, every damn old ass band you can think of. I was listening to it just to relieve myself from depression, because it was sad. I mean, it was just stuck in bed. I felt like I was paralyzed. So now I'm stuck in bed again. Left foot is in excruciating pain. And my dad said, Ted, this is FMF. You can't attribute this to exercise. So I called up my foot doctor. And I said, because my dad told me that the only thing that alleviates this condition is a medicine called colchicine. And colchicine comes from a flower, the Latin name of which I do not remember, but I do remember a street name for this flower. It's literally called Naked Ladies Flower. You can look this up, Naked Ladies Flower, and it's one of two flowers that has colchicine. There's only 2 flowers in the world that have colchicine, and Naked Ladies is one of them. And he told me that colchicine is the only thing that can prevent these pains from happening, and also that can get rid of these pains when you have them. So instead of being in bed for a month, you can take colchicine and it'll go away. The pain will literally start alleviating the next day or within the same day that you took the pills. So I called up I woke up in the morning, foot was excruciatingly in pain. I called up my foot doctor and I said, Doc, you did the x-ray on my right foot. You couldn't find anything on it. I said, but now the pain has traveled to the left foot. and this is inexplicable. I don't know how to explain this. And he said, it sounds like you have gout, which is interesting because FMF, familial Mediterranean fever, is basically, it's not gout exactly, but it's like gout. Both gout and familial Mediterranean fever are both considered auto-inflammatory diseases. They're both triggered by a certain protein called purines, and they both lead to pain that's caused by what's it called? Uric acid in the body. So they're both related, definitely. And he says, it sounds like you have gout. And I said, can you give me some colchicine? Because also, familial Mediterranean fever is dealt with by taking colchicine, but so is gout. When you have gout, they give you colchicine. And almost no doctor in America knows what familial Mediterranean fever is. You talk to any doctor in America, the chances of you meeting one that knows about familial Mediterranean fever, FMF, is close to zero. The only way you will ever meet a doctor in America that is familiar with FMF is if they are basically living in an area where there are enough Semitic people who have it. That's why if you want to know the doctors in America who deal with FMF, you're going to find them in New York. You're going to find them in Houston. You're going to find them in areas where you have a decent amount of Semitic people. So he said, can you give me, I said, can you prescribe me colchicine? He said, yes. So he gave me the prescription. I got the colchicine. And I said, if this colchicine works, then it proves that I got FMF. Because my father told me that my dad had like 2 uncles who had FMF. He had cousins who had FMF. He had all these people who had FMF. And when you have that many family members who have FMF, the chances of you also getting it, it's definitely above 50%. We'll just put it that way. So I took two colchicine pills. Next morning I woke up, the pain was still excruciating. So I thought, maybe I don't have FMF. Maybe all this colchicine stuff is pointless. By 12 noon, all of a sudden, this strange sensation started transpiring in my feet, my left foot. And it was the sensation of the pain alleviating. I could feel it. Like I could just feel the pain leaving the foot. It was insane. Never felt anything like it. It just leaves the foot. The pain just leaves. And I'm looking at my left foot, and I start moving it around, and there's still some pain there, but it was nothing like it was in the morning. I'm like, hold the phone. I think I can walk. I put my feet on the ground, and I'm like, I'm still limping, but I'm like, man, I know I'm limping, but I can get, actually, this is actually tolerable. So the next day I take 2 more pills. And the day after that, the pain was, I'm still limping, but nothing like it was before. Literally, if I did not take colchicine, I would have been stuck in bed for another month. No doubt. So every day I took 2 pills for several days. And after basically a week after the pain hit the left foot, maybe a little bit more than a week, I was walking pretty normally. And there would be a slight little gimp, but by the next day it was gone. So I wrote the doctor and I said, thank you so much for giving me that prescription, because it worked. So I wondered why. I got this sort of pain, and I thought, well, is it triggered by exercise? Is it triggered by diet? Like, what triggers these flare-ups? You know, so I started doing research on FMF and diet, and it basically, it turns out that anybody who has FMF is a Semite. You're of Semitic origin. The people who have the highest rates of FMF are Jews. This is a fact. In Israel, 1 out of 4 people have the gene for FMF. So there's a gene that you have when you have FMF. It's called MEV something. I don't remember what it is. 1 out of 4 people in Israel have this gene. Now, that doesn't mean they all are experiencing symptoms. Most people who have this gene will not experience symptoms, but some people do. And so if you are a carrier of this gene and you have children, there is a chance that your child will suffer with FMF, will suffer the symptoms. And, you know, when I was 11 years old, or when I was 12 years old, I remember I could not walk for several days, could not get out of bed. It was inexplicable. You couldn't explain why. Couldn't get out of bed. Horrendous pain on my right foot, on my right leg. And I remember my mother taking me to the doctor. They did this whole blood test and they did an x-ray and all this stuff. And the doctor came out. I remember he was an American Chinese guy. California has a lot of Asian people, and they're good people. And this doctor said, I really, to this day, I remember his honesty. He said, "We really don't know. Like, there's nothing there." And my mom said, "Like, what do you think? What do you think this could be?" And the doctor said, "You know, I'll never forget it. He told us this. He said, you know, sometimes you have kids who just randomly can't walk." He said that. He's like, they have these horrible, excruciating pains, and they can't walk, and we don't know why. And my mother asked him, "Do you know anything about FMF?" He didn't know anything. Because FMF is a condition that almost nobody in the world has. And if you do have it, you are either Jewish, you're Palestinian, you're Turkish, or you're Armenian, and maybe you're Persian, or maybe you're Italian. And the reason why you have Italians with FMF or Spaniards with FMF is because of the Semitic genetics that entered those people long ago. And this condition, FMF, has been in the Hebrew people, the Jewish people, for probably thousands of years. And I began to really wonder what triggers the pain. So I started looking back. Okay, 2016, I had that hour-long back session. The next day, bam, had the pain. So I looked into FMF and triggers. Sure enough, there are numerous studies that you can read online about FMF and certain triggers. There was one particular study that I read. It came from Armenia, because FMF is a condition that is known in Armenia. And basically, they took like 70 Armenians who had FMF, and they told them, when you have a flare-up, meaning when you have these excruciating pains, call us up and tell us what you did before you got the pain, before the pain popped up. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, I don't know how they were able to do this study. Like, I'm in excruciating pain, but hold on, let me call up the doctor. Doc. But anyway, they actually did this study. And there were 3 things that were done before these Armenians would get flare-ups. There were 3 particular things that were done by these people. And again, I'm not saying that, you know, one Armenian did all 3 of them, or like all these people did all 3 of them. No, but these people did either 3 things before they got a flare-up. One of them was excessive exercise. They would go exercise. They did some kind of they did some kind of athletic activity, martial arts, something like that. Or they would go dancing, and they would dance heavy, and the next day they would have pains on their, I'm assuming, on their feet. So exercise is a trigger, and the reason why exercise is a trigger is because when you exercise, your muscles get flooded up with acid. This is, everybody who does sports knows this. you have acid buildup in your muscles, and that acid triggers an FMF attack. So that's one thing. So, okay, 2016, that explains it. I did an hour-long bag session, bam. 2017, had a really bad flare-up in the summer of 2017, but didn't do exercise. And this is why I brought up the croquettes. Why did Ted bring up some random Dutch recipe in the store? Here's the reason why. Because another thing that they noticed in this Armenian study was that some people, most people who called up in this study to report a flare-up said that they ate something that they should not have eaten before. They ate deep fried stuff. They ate something that was processed. They ate food that's not really good for you. And the next cause was, actually, I don't remember the next, I think, stress. Stress was the second. So there was exercise, stress, and then there was diet. And what would trigger stress for some of these people was school. That was a big one, right? I got studies coming. I don't know if I'm going to pass. I feel stressed. I get a flare-up. Or I'm not making enough money to pay the bills or something like that. I get a flare-up. So stress was a factor. But the biggest factor, according to this study, was diet. It was diet. And they would they would go out, they would eat some, I don't know, deep fried bologna or something like that, and they would have a flare-up. So I'm thinking perhaps it was the deep fried meat pie, I just call them meat pies, the Dutch croquettes that triggered it, because I was eating a lot of that stuff. Then, so I'm thinking, okay, what did I do? I exercised. For this year, it was exercise. It was doing these very intense bag sessions. No kicking, because I didn't want to hurt my feet, but lots of punching, squats. I was doing a kind of like a. Actually, no, it wasn't a circuit training. It was just a workout. But I did some bag work, and then I did squats. So in this case, in the third case, it was exercise. So I thought, okay, the exercise triggered it. But here's something crazy. This week, early this week, I got another flare-up on the left foot to the point where I was limping again. And that pain was there. And I could feel it getting worse. So what did I do? Of course, I took 2 colchicine pills. The next day, felt a lot better. Took another 2. Now I'm walking pretty normally. But again, another flare-up happened early this week. So I thought, what did I do the day before I got that flare-up? I drank a beer. I drank an IPA, and the next day, boom, the flare-up. And it turns out that beer is very high in purines, which is what causes gout attacks, which is what causes high inflammation. So I figured out that beer is a huge trigger and it's not the alcohol. It's actually the proteins in the beer that I think are produced by the yeast in the fermentation process. So yeah, that's the thing. So beer is a big trigger for me. I can drink wine, but beer is a huge trigger. Like literally, I drink beer and the next day I have pain. I'm limping again. And my father told me that he had a cousin who had FMF, and his cousin would have these. His cousin would have these terrible pains. And my dad told me that he loved to drink beer, and he would have these flare-ups. So I think I can't drink beer anymore, which kind of sucks, but I can drink wine and I can have champagne and all that other good stuff, but I can't have beer. So anytime I have an urge for a beer, I will simply drink a bottle of my homemade kombucha, because kombucha and beer have similar textures. So I can get that nice, crispy, refreshing beer texture that I like so much. They say, you can drink soda, and I guess, yeah, you could drink soda, but soda tastes like carbonated sugar water. Doesn't have that bitter balance to it, but kombucha does. So, so there you go. That's my experience with FMF, guys. It's triggered by exercise. It's triggered by beer. It's triggered by eating foods that you should not be eating. Basically, I gotta live like a Jew. Because another thing that triggers FMF, and they have done studies on this, is foods that are inflammatory, processed meats, bacon, pork is high in these purines, in these purines. Shellfish is super high in purines. So basically, I gotta live under the kosher law. It's almost like God put it in our people. I don't know. It's almost like God gave it to the Hebrews to warn them. You know what I mean? I could imagine in ancient Israel, they're like, hey, Uri ate pork yesterday and now he can't walk. God cursed him with lameness. That's what happened. That's what I think happened. I think God put it in their genes to say, hey, if they don't want to follow kosher, they're going to have to follow kosher. If they eat pig, they're going down. They can't walk. So there you go. It's like, bam. Here you go. I gotta live like a Muslim. Gotta live like a Muslim, man. No pork, no bacon, none of that shit. Gotta cut that shit off my diet. So I started eating a lot more greens again, collard greens, kale, all that hipster dipster stuff, which gets a little bit old after a while, and the urges start coming along. I don't know about hard liquor, but wine is totally A-okay, so I can drink wine. I mean, I have been drinking wine, and wine has been, I've had no issues. And that was the thing. I started drinking wine, and I'm like, I don't have any problems. So I'm like, well, if wine's not a problem, then beer shouldn't be a problem. So I had, okay, I'm not going to lie, guys. I had two IPAs. Not one after the other, but I had one IPA, and it was so damn good, guys, because I had not had a beer in a long time at that point. I had one Shiner. That Shiner, see, here's what happened. The Shiner beer I had earlier in the week. Well, before the beginning of this week, I had a Shiner, which is a good Texas, German, Czech, Central European beer. And nothing happened. So I was like, okay, I had one beer. Nothing happened. So the next day, I'm like, I think I'll have an IPA. And again, at this point, I had not been drinking beer in a long time. So this was the first time in a while that I started drinking beer again. And it was this IPA was so refreshing. I put it in the freezer for like an hour. I took it out and it was so refreshing. I was like, I got to have another one. So I had a second IPA. I was like, wow. I was like, I think I'm good with beer. The next morning I woke up, pain. So yeah, that's my FMF experience. Basically, it's a confirmation that I am a Semite, possibly a Jew. You know, it's possible that my ancestors were Hebrews who were forced into Islam. So that's my experience. That is my experience, guys. I have to return back to kosherness. I have to return back to the ways of Islam, the ways of my ancestors. I have to turn away from haram. That's all haram, man. Bacon, alcohol, haram. It's all haram, man. I was living the way of the Gentile. I was living the way of, I'm not exaggerating, guys. Here I am, a Middle Eastern male in America, making gumbo. Here I am, making gumbo. Okay, I don't mean some half-ass gumbo. I mean gumbo with the roux, and believe me, I know how to make the roux, guys. All the Cajun people are like, well, you don't know how to make a roux. You got to do it a certain way. Oh, you don't know how to do it. That's the most. It's not that difficult, guys. It's literally oil and flour. That's not that complicated, okay? And you get a whisk, and you whisk that shit on a high heat until it turns chocolate brown, and then The trick to the roux is, and this, when people say, "Oh, I burned the roux." The reason why you burned your roux is because you probably weren't prepared. But the trick to the roux is cutting all your vegetables, your peppers, your onions, your garlic, and I didn't have celery. Okay, so I know it's a big no-no, but you got to get your aromatics cut, so that way when that roux turns a chocolate brown, you just throw the aromatics in there and you're good to go. But here I am making gumbo, and I've never been to Louisiana, but I saw it on YouTube, and I'm like, doesn't look bad. And I here I am, right? And I'm putting sausage in it, chicken in it, and okra and freaking pork sausage, and just going wild with it. Eating pork and bacon and just living the way of the Gentile. Completely indulging myself in haram. Okay. Boom. Here comes the FMF. And it's like God saying, what are you doing? You weren't born in Louisiana, man. Your family didn't come from Germany. Here you are stuffing your face with pork and sausage and guzzling beer like some guy from England. What are you doing? Your people came from the desert. Like, here's a wake-up call. Bam! Your genetics aren't happy. So I turned away from haram, guys. Turn away from haram. Believe it or not, the pain was so bad that it made me pray to God. I'm not exaggerating. Just walking to the bathroom was excruciatingly painful. I mean, when I went to the foot doctor, they gave me this clipboard and this form that I have to sign. And they're like, "Oh, from a rate to 1 to 10, how bad is the pain?" I'm like, 10. Shit's painful. Can't walk. And I remember in 2017 when I had a flare up, walking to the bathroom was horrendous. And it was like when I had to take a leak, I would hold it for as long as I could, because I didn't want to walk. And the only way that I'm not exaggerating when I say, and this is meant in no blasphemous way whatsoever, but the only way that I was able to motivate myself to get out of the bed was thinking about Christ carrying up his cross and walking up Golgotha. That was the only way I'm not exaggerating. That was the only way to motivate myself. If he could pick up the cross and carry it all the way up to his own crucifixion, I can deal with this. And it was the only thing that motivated me. Okay. What happened with your back? What did you do before you had it on your back? But anyway, yeah, it was so crazy, guys. It was so crazy. And here I am listening to Tori Amos. Oh God, here I am listening to Tori Amos, and she's like, everybody else's girl. Maybe one day she'll be her own. And like that music, the rhythm, the way she sings, it helped me cope. It helped me cope, man. Or that one song that she had, what was it? I can't think of the rhythm. Hold on a second, guys. What was the rhythm of that song? Why do we crucify ourselves? I forget the rhythm, though. And then and that one song that helped me. There was this one song by Alanis Morissette called "Thank You." That song helped me out so much. It just did. It helped me out. That song really helped me. But I was stuck in bed for basically 2 months. And There's that one song from Alanis Morissette. She's like, "Thank you, India." Thank you, India. Thank you, terror. And then she does this thing where she says, "Thank you, disillusionment," which is the best part of the song. My favorite line. So, yeah, here I was listening to feminist music from the late 90s, early 2000s in excruciating pain. And I had to use the Golgotha thought to because again I was like, I don't want to get out of bed. I don't want to get out of bed. And then I would think about Golgotha, and I was like, okay, I can do this. I can do this. Okay, here we go. So that's my FMF experience. And the thing is that there's very little information about FMF, especially on YouTube. There's very few people. It was kind of creepy because I looked up FMF on YouTube and I found a video on this showing this one Italian family, and they had a son with FMF. Okay, that's fine. That's fine. Then I find this one. I found this one video. The thumbnail had two guys in front of the camera. Okay, you know where this is going. Two guys in front of the camera, and they're both Jewish, and they're like, "We're Jewish, but it turns out we have FMF, which is very, very important for us to know because we're going to have a child by a surrogate mother." So it's very, I'm like, okay, I'm out of this. It's like that. That's all I could, that's pretty much all I could find. Very little. I did find one video that showing an Australian Jewish girl who suffered with FMF, and she had a similar experience to me in the sense that nobody knew what she had. And then a friend told her, "Hey, are you Jewish?" And she said, "Yeah." And he goes, "You might have FMF." And she did. And so she's taken the colchicine. So here we go. Here we go. Oh yeah, and I was listening to that one song by Tori Amos where she's singing about all the plants that she has in her garden. And she has this one part, it's so bizarre. It's the end of the song, and she, for like 5 minutes, she goes, and it sounds monotonous, but it gets better. But she goes, "Dividing Canaan," and she's saying "dividing Canaan" over and over again in this sort of mystical way. "Dividing Canaan, dividing Canaan," and then all of a sudden you hear this like industrial drum beat in the back, and then she continues on with it, and I was like, "Damn, this song is good." I will say. Okay, hold on. Here we go, guys. I'm going to read your comments now. I've been talking long enough, but there's some other things I want to talk about. They suffer from gout. That's right. No beer. I'm sorry. I know. It sucks. I will. I'll start looking. I'll stop drinking beer, and all of a sudden, I'll start looking more Jewish. I'll be like, ah. Lactic acid. Yeah, lactic acid, but I think uric acid is also comes out in exercise, if I'm not mistaken. Let's see here. Reminds. Okay, hold on. I'm gonna try to read all of your guys' comments here. Okay. I'm doing fine now. If it wasn't for the colchicine, I would be in bed right now. No, there's no doubt in my mind. I would be stuck in bed. MRI, yes, I made a mistake here. I did my back in doing high reps, medium weight on deadlifts. Well, I mean, I think maybe that was due to bad positioning. Yes. Yeah, the Achilles tendon had some damage on it. But I think that triggered an FMF attack. It's completely genetic. There's no way you can prevent yourself from having FMF. I think, though, there is a way that you can prevent the flare-ups, and that is to basically take colchicine every day, and or you can change your diet and eat more anti-inflammatory foods, high in leafy greens and broccoli and things like that. Chicken is okay. Beef in excess is bad, but you can have, I think, 100 grams of beef a day. But this is what people. This is for people with. This is what they recommend to people with gout. But because FMF and gout are similar, you can sort of follow the same rule set. Chicken is very low in purines. Salmon has 0 purines. You can actually eat as much salmon as you want. But you can probably prevent these flare-ups from happening by not eating so much fried stuff, not eating processed meats, eating more vegetables. And here's the thing is, I remember, I was looking back when I was stuck in this predicament. I was looking back at this whole thing. And in 2018, I did jujitsu for months. I was going to training every week, 3, 4, 5 times a week. Had no flare-ups. So I'm thinking, wait a second. I did jujitsu for this long, 2018, going into the beginning of 2019. No flare-ups until I did have one flare-up, and that was literally the day that I quit. I had a flare-up. But before then, no flare. And the flare-up that I did have doing jujitsu training only lasted for about a week, which wasn't that bad. And it never got to the point where I was stuck in bed. I was just limping around. But looking back, I was thinking, well, why didn't I get flare-ups for all those months doing heavy training? And we were doing heavy training. I'm talking like 8-minute rounds, 5 or 6 times, 1 minute break in between. But you're doing 8 minutes straight of sparring in each round. It was insane. No flare-ups for months and months and months and months. What happened? Looking back, one thing that I did during my jiu-jitsu training was I had a lot of things growing in my garden, a lot of collard greens and a lot of kale and arugula and a lot of herbs. And I was drinking herbal tea pretty much every single day. And I was eating a lot of leafy green vegetables every single day, or almost every single day. And I think that is what helped prevent the flare-ups. So even though I was doing extremely heavy exercise, I was keeping my diet pretty well. And I think the leafy greens, because they're so anti-inflammatory, they prevented the flare-ups. That is my theory about the whole thing. Because going into 2019, I still ate a lot of leafy greens. 2020, the same thing. 2021, it's kind of going down, but nothing happened. And then here's 2022. I'm not eating as much vegetables as I used to. Drinking a lot of beer, still doing exercise. Boom. Got a flare-up. Familial Mediterranean fever is considered a rare disease worldwide. However, it is very common in people in Sephardic, non-Ashkenazi Jewish, Armenian, Arab, and Turkish heritage. You're right. The only thing that I would add is that it doesn't hit Ashkenazi Jews. I think that is kind of a misconception that people have, because there are plenty of Ashkenazi Jews who have FMF. Go to New York and go to the Jewish hospitals in New York. You'll see that they definitely have patients who are Ashkenazim. Paramore? No, I don't listen to Paramore. Yeah, listen to your dad, sure. Always knew naked ladies were good for something. I see where Ted is going. No, I wasn't going there, but it's a good joke. Listening to Tori Amos. What's this? A new form of torture? Well, I was in torture, so I thought maybe I'll torture myself And another way to get my attention off the pain. Actually, her music's pretty decent. I'm not going to lie. Her music's very well produced. But some of her music is very weird. And I think that's why Tori Amos never got as far as other famous female singers did. I think it's just because her music was very feminist and it was very angry. So, yeah. Stay away from beer. I'm afraid I'm gonna have to do that. Always to best of one's ability to know family medical history going back at least. Yeah, I agree. Absolutely. Too many people need to care more about family history in all aspects. Great minds meet in the right places. So it's because uncontrollable uric acid in the blood that affects the muscles. Basically, your body, when you have FMF or when you have gout, your body cannot metabolize the acid. And that acid leads to excruciating pain. And I wasn't only getting pain on my feet, I was also getting pain on both of my hips, both of my hip joints, which is very common in FMF. Another thing also, and this is where the fever in FMF comes in, the F in the first F in FMF comes in, is I was getting very high body temperature. I was sweating profusely during these flare-ups. And the reason for that was because I was getting a fever. That's why it's called familial Mediterranean fever. Glad you're out of pain. Thank you very much, Brainstorm 4207. Second opinion of being your own doctor. The acid in the blood is from sugar. It could be, yeah. It's possible, yes. Eating excess sugar, they say, is something that you shouldn't do if you have gout. Theo, are you on no purine diet? What do you eat then? I'm not on a no purine diet. I'm just lowering my intake of purines. So beef has purines, but I'm not going to stop eating beef. Pork, I think, is very high in purines. Bacon, very high in purines. They say sardines are high in purines, but I've been eating sardines and I've had no issues whatsoever. So I looked into this yesterday and I found out that sardines do have purines, but it's actually a different type of purine. And also the health benefits in sardines, like the omega-3 fatty acids, are so good in sardines. It actually outweighs the possible negative effects that you could get from eating sardines. I have never had any negative effects from eating sardines, so I will continue to eat sardines. I have to increase my intake of leafy greens, definitely. Kale, collard greens. Also, kombucha really helps with pyrins because kombucha, I heard, breaks down the pyrins. So kombucha is totally fine. Wine is really good. Basically, I just need to cut off processed meats. That's pretty much where I'm at. No processed meats. Another thing, how many Israelis are Sephardic? I don't know, actually, but I do know that 1 in every 4 Israeli, 1 in every 4 people in Israel have the gene for FMF. Just shows you how little we really know about the body. Yeah, we're still learning about it. Reminds me of Peterson's daughter, Michaela, who had an autoimmune disease. Yes, it's auto. This is an auto disease. FMF is not considered an autoimmune disease. It's considered an auto-inflammatory disease. But yes, Peterson's daughter did suffer an autoimmune disease, but she has prevented any sort of symptoms by eating an all-meat diet, which I don't know. If it works for her, it works for her. I know I'm not going to criticize her. I wouldn't be able to do that personally. The takeaway from this, that Theo has finally come out of the closet. He is a Jew. Yes, sounds very familiar. It's only in no, that's not true. It's a misconception. There's Ashkenazi Jews who have FMF. That is a fact. Yeah, us Ashkenazis get Crohn's disease. That's it. Yeah, thank God Palestinians don't get that, man. But that's a very rough disease to go through. I'm sorry that you guys go through that. If you are not your own doctor, you are a fool. Hippocrates. A single IPA will trigger a Crohn's attack for me. So yeah. Beautiful Mediterranean wine. Well, you know, I can drink as much wine as I want and nothing happens. So again, I got to go to the Mediterranean. Here I am guzzling down beer like I'm some Viking. It's like, and God's like, what are you doing? Your genetics aren't built for this. You can't do this. Bam. My Jewish friend on his mom's side has neuropathy, C-curve scoliosis, which will eventually become a radial, allergic to opioids, and which leads to PS. I don't know what that means, but that's too bad. So kosher laws and haram laws are actually scientific? For some people, I think it is, yeah. I was made of yerba mate and Grey Goose a few years back. Yerba mate is really good. I don't know about hard liquor, but beer is definitely like the biggest culprit with these inflammatory problems. And Crohn's disease attacks your stomach muscles. Interesting, man, that Crohn's disease, it sounds kind of like FMF in a way, but it's worse than FMF.